Hey, Brent Leary here. It's a different A Few Good Minutes. It's a Friday, A Few Good Minutes. It's a Friday the 13th, A Few Good Minutes. I think this is the first time that I've ever done a Friday the 13th, Few Good Minutes. And on top of that, it's a predictions kind of Friday the 13th. We're going to be peering out, thinking about what 2024 has in store, what may be the things that everybody is talking about from the perspective of technology and the enterprise. We're not going, full bore. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe my guest wants to do that. He's kind of dressed for it, but you'll see in a second. So anyway, we're going to take the next 30 minutes or so and spend them with Don Schuerman. Now, Don has been a guest on a variety of PPN shows at this point. He's been on A Few Good Minutes before. Of course, he's been on the CRM Players. He's been a part of a CRM Players executive roundtable conversation. We've talked to him at Pega World. So who else should I bring in who I think is not only not afraid of no ghosts, but he's not afraid of predicting and looking into the future and looking at 2024. So with all that said, let me introduce Don Schuerman, CTO and VP of, now let me get this, product, marketing, and technology at Pega.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back, man.
Thank you. Brent, once I heard we were doing this on a Friday the 13th in October, I figured we were going to be busting some myths, making some predictions. And I figured if there's not an opportunity to wear a Ghostbusters costume to some sort of business related event, this is it. And I'm jumping on it.
This is awesome because I had no idea he was going to fully embrace, not just embrace, but fully embrace. And the authenticity of this Space Busters uniform is actually it's commendable. You've got it down to you took the lead Buster too.
Yeah, I did. I took Peter Venkman, the Bill Murray Ghostbuster. when I was doing this, I built this to wear with my son. He was Slimer, the Green Ghost, and so I figured, if he's going to be Slimer, then I get to be Bill Murray, which I think for a lot of us who grew up in the '80s of a certain mentality, that was sort of a little bit of a dream we all had at one point or another. So
hey, yeah, that's all I can say to that. And I'm so glad to see that you have fulfilled the dream. So that's really,
or at least a dream. Yes.
Well, yeah, one of the dreams. Okay. But so we're like on the cusp. I can't believe we're pretty much in mid-October already, which means there's only about 2.5 months left in 2023. So we can start looking at 2024. But before we kind of look ahead, why don't I get you to kind of chime in on the year behind? We went from, let's see, a year ago right now, nobody was talking about GenAI. Nobody was talking about Chat GPT and all that stuff. That was still like a month and a half out from a year ago. But it's taken over everything. So you've had like a year, and Pega's had almost a year to kind of take all this stuff in. Where has your thought and Pega's thought and activity gone from the first kind of moment this Chat GPT stuff hit and just ripple through everything to where we are now? Has there been any kind of like a transformational journey from, it's only been like 11 months, but has it been like a different of looking at this from the very beginning to where, like, mushroom to where we are today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also important to note that we've been looking at large language models for some time. I think we did a demo of GPT 2.0 at Pega World back in 2019.
Wow.
Right. So some of these large language models have been percolating. I think what happened was ChatGPT was sort of this killer app, and everybody and their CEO could now play with this stuff. And all of a sudden, businesses got asked to be like, okay, what does this mean? How do I need to change? How do I need to transform? And what I think we're entering is maybe a little bit of, and I think what you're going to see in 2024 is this kind of lull sweeping into actual adoption. because what I'm hearing when I talk to a lot of clients is simultaneously a lot of excitement and interest about this stuff, but also a lot of like, well, our legal team's looking at it and we're trying to put compliance processes in place. And we just released a whole bunch of Gen AI features in our latest release of Pega Infinity back in September, and number of clients were like, we got to get our hands on them, we want to use them, and a number of other clients were like, please do not turn that on, we cannot let you turn that on yet, like we need to get validation and understanding of sort of like what our rules and policies are going to be. So what a lot of times, I think sometimes in the tech industry, we overestimate the adoption of stuff in the first year, and then we actually underestimate the impact in 3 years.
Wow.
Right. So part of me wonders whether we're now starting to hit that point where we're going to actually start seeing the real use of this inside of the enterprise begin to tick up.
All right. So this is really interesting. Let me ask you a quick question. You didn't by chance happen to see the CRM Player Show yesterday, did you?
I did not. No.
Okay, good. No, that's a good thing, because I'm doing something that I hadn't thought I was going to do, but based on what you just said, I'm just curious. So we do a segment on the CRM Players called Stump the Godfather, not to be confused with Stomp the Godfather. We don't do Stomp the Godfather. We just do Stump the Godfather.
Stomp the Godfather is where you make the Godfather play like rhythmic percussion on trash cans, right? Like that's.
That would actually give me an idea for a new segment there, Don. But no, this is where I pose a question to him and let the audience chime in before we get him to answer, and we see if he's right or not. And it just so happened that yesterday's question, I have it handy, and who would have known I was going to be using it here? So I want to see what your guess is on this. So I'm calling this Stump the Space Buster or the Ghostbusters.
Okay.
So we're going to Stump the Ghostbuster. What percentage of companies are collaborating with GenAI for marketing content today? What percentage do you think?
Today? I would guess 40%.
Okay.
But that may be, my initial thought was 23, and then I said 40.
You should have stuck with your initial thought. Look how close you would have been to that.
Yeah.
26%. But it goes back to the point, I think, that you had expressed. A lot of people think, oh, we're already immersed in it. Because everybody's talking about it, everybody's using it and doing it. But when it comes to the enterprise, it's not that many yet. It's just, and this came from Deloitte Digital, literally just came out yesterday. Now there's a lot of planning and stuff, but the actual use of it, we're still in the early adopter phase.
And that planning is like, plan to deploy before 2025, right? So like we've still got a year to, and I think part of this stuff is really powerful, but there are still, at least in IC at the enterprise, some unanswered questions around how do I do it securely? Like, do I need to train my own models? Do I use things like, you know about RAG, retrieval augmented generation, right? Do I use things about like RAG to ingest my own data into the prompts without having to retrain the models? And there are probably use cases that each one of those align best with. And I think there's a degree to which even the experts in this technology are still trying to figure out, like, well, what are the limits of RAG? And then when do I actually have to do fine-tune training? And when do I need a custom trained model? And I think we're still figuring some of that out.
Do we figure maybe the regulation aspects of this out in 2024? Do you foresee? Let me put it like this. Do you think that there will be regulation, and will it be the best type of regulation to move things forward?
I think we might see regulation in Europe.
Okay.
I am looking at the current state of our congressional system, right? I don't even know if we will have a Speaker of the House of Representatives by 2024. Right?
I laugh, but it's
and funding for the government into 2024, let alone like the ability for complex regulation. And I think there is going to need to be this mix of governmental regulation, But the governmental regulation by its nature is going to need to be broad. This technology is moving so fast that like the regulation you spent 3 months writing, by the time you actually got it to the floor of any congressional body, it's already behind the tech, right? So I think we're going to have to figure out how we do that. And also, you know, I always worry when we call for the market to self-regulate itself, but I also think that there's a degree to which employees and consumers are going to have to also demand and drive, you know, some of the expectation of this. And I think in general, people adopt a technology when it makes things easier for them and better for them. So I think that there will be some, you know, drive of, you will get employee adoption of this, you will get it more accepted into customer channels if the net impact is an improvement of their experience.
Everybody has said from like the beginning of time, when it comes to CRM at least, and when it comes to SFA, like salespeople actually using CRM, you'll never get able to get them to use it because they don't see what's in it for them. They look at it as something that's for management, something that, you know, you just want me to put all this data in, and what do I get out of it in return? Right. And so until you're able to give them real reasons and to make it real easy for them to not type and swipe, but talk and do and interact like that, that you might not see a huge jump in adoption. But I think there's an opportunity for that.
Well, and I think there's an opportunity for us to use GenAI to actually make that adoption curve easier. So let me give you an example. We have a sales team, right? We have like I'm sure most sales teams have, a portal that has a bunch of sales content that is assembled by our product marketing teams and our industry teams to help our sales teams sell. And, you know, as somebody who looks at the usage of that content periodically, like I would love to see more people using that content. I don't know if I'm alone in people who make, right? We took some of our technology, Pega, and this RAG-based approach to basically taking that content, chunking it up, putting it in a vector database, and then using it to engineer prompts so that salespeople, instead of searching a portal, could just ask questions. And we put that, what we called Sales Buddy, directly into their sales automation experience, which is also Pega's sales automation tech. So it's front and center. It's right there. They click a button. They can ask a question. The uptick of that in its like first week, I think exceeded what we were seeing on our portal in its first week, right? Because same content, but we use GenAI to make it easier for the user to get it, and made it easier for us to embed it right into the experience where they already were. So they didn't have to go anywhere, right? And I think those kinds of GenAI solutions where I'm actually making it easier for the user, I'm getting them faster to the content. You know, we're going to be doing stuff in Pega where we take all of our knowledge and documentation about how to use Pega and embed it directly into the developer experience. So when you're in a developer experience, as you're doing things, we're using GenAI to pull answers to the questions based on what you're doing and surface them right there for you. Like those are the places where I think this technology is going to actually reduce that adoption curve because it makes it easier and it puts it front and center where users need it.
So are we making predictions for next year for really addressing that adoption curve? Do you think next year, given all that's taken place in the kind of development of all this stuff and the acceptance of all this stuff, do you think the convergence of the acceptance and actually the excitement around this with the actual use cases that are meat and potato use cases, not the pie in the sky, not the parlor trick stuff, but the stuff that really, it may not seem exciting, but to a sales rep, this could be like the best thing they could
like if I can use this like retrieval augmented generation piece, right? Because I know we're working on productizing that, and hopefully that'll be something you see, in the coming months, right? But as we make that and embed that into our sales automation tools, our customer service products, our even workflow automation products, so that I can actually surface the knowledge that's relevant to you for what you're doing dynamically as you're doing it, right? And in some cases, even answering questions and reassembling the knowledge, synthesizing it in new ways for you. I think that's going to be one of these real pragmatic, practical use cases. The augmented generation approach lets you, like, you write your prompts to GenAI such that you say, I'm going to give you all the information you need to answer this question. And if you don't have the answer, you say, I don't know. So you're basically preventing GenAI from hallucinating or making up, incorrect facts. So it helps create a safer path for these use cases. It doesn't require retraining or fine tuning of the models. So I think that's a use case that's going to be pretty powerful. I think we're seeing, like, I think there's similar things around what I would call relatively, as you said, they're not like super huge, but they're simple. Like in the latest release of Pega, we use GenAI to generate test data for a workflow application. Well, you know what? That's 3 to 4 hours of a developer's time that we will now give you back, so that developer can actually focus on stuff that delivers business value, not figuring out what their best friend's dog's name is so that they can have like test data, right? Like, so those are kind of things where I think like those use cases, and they also build comfort with the technology. Yeah. They also get people like comfortable with this.
So hopefully more comfort, more reason for enterprise users to really be excited about this.
Yep.
What about ethics? What about where should we be in 2024 with the ethical use of this stuff? Because, there are a lot of, I'll call them like pirates out there, people that are using this thing for very nefarious reasons. And right now there's not a whole lot of oversight,
No.
So we talked a little bit about regulation, but beyond regulation, ethical use. What is 2024 shaping up in terms of not how we use it, but why we use it and how we use it, I guess, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that, and we've been through this a lot, right? Because we've spent the last 10 to 15 years selling next best action technology, which is another form of AI, right? If you think of generative AI as kind of like the right brain of AI that can create things and generate things, right? Analytical AI is like the left brain of AI technology, right? GenAI actually isn't very good at analytics. Like, ask GPT-4 to do simple math, and like I think the last stat I saw was that it's actually getting worse over time at simple math. But analytical AI is actually really good at making predictions and making decisions. It's also useful in the fact that it doesn't require massive data sets. It can be trained on the kind of data sets that organizations have, enterprises have about their customers or their process history. And so we use that analytical AI to help clients drive things like next best action. So recommend the right action to their customers, recommend the potential products that you could sell, etc. And what we've found is that the clients who focus on using that to drive empathetic conversations, relevant conversations to their customers, actually get the best long-term business benefit out of it as well. Right? So like you could take this technology and optimize it to recommend, like, sell a product, so that every customer conversation you're having is, here's the product we could sell you. Here's the product we could sell you. If you do that, you're eventually going to turn the customer off. Whereas if you're using the next best action to have the conversation that's most relevant for the customer, and that may be, hey, I see you might be having this problem. Can I help you? Or, I noticed that you were trying to get this done on the website. Can I help you finish that? Or maybe the next best action is nothing at all. Like, I just leave you alone for a little bit because you're good. Then when I do find a real opportunity to offer you a product, you're much more likely to accept it because it's relevant and it's empathetic to your needs, as opposed to just the company pushing its products, right? So, we have examples like the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, who they use this next best action engine during the pandemic to actually, for their customers, find government offered benefits that the customer might not be taking advantage of. So they were able to connect their customer to benefits that the customer was eligible for, right? That didn't cost the bank anything to do that. But boy, all of a sudden, do they become a trusted partner to that customer in a
Yeah.
way like those are the kinds of use cases that I think represent not only ethical and empathetic uses of this, but frankly are the ones that are going to allow the leaders to develop better connections with their customers and better connections with their employees.
That's a great use case. And that's a great demonstration of a good outcome and a positive outcome.
Yeah.
And I would hope that that would be the case. I'm sure there's going to be some not so positive uses of that, but we're human. People use it for good or bad. It's just the way that people use things. But talk a little bit about potentially how all of that leads into maybe 2024 being the year of the autonomous enterprise.
Yeah. So the autonomous enterprise can be a little bit of a tricky word, like autonomous. What does that mean? Is it like going to take us over? I think of autonomous as meaning an enterprise that is self-optimizing, where your business goals are ultimately still defined by you, like your business leaders, your business, but you've got technology and your automation and your intelligence that is able to optimize or recommend optimizations that drive you faster to your business goals, right? So an example of that is things like having business processes where you're able to say, my goal with this business process is to maximize my efficiency, but I also really want to protect my net promoter score. I don't want this to become, right, a bad experience for my customer. Well, we've now got a lot of data around from process mining, right, about where bottlenecks are. We understand customer touch points. So like what is the frequency of customer touch points? Are they calling back against the same problem multiple times? So we can actually take that business goal and the data and some of the prediction and pattern engines that we have, and then begin to automatically surface to you like, hey, we found this bottleneck in your process, and it's tied to $50 million of additional spend every year. And by the way, we think you could fix this bottleneck if you applied an AI prediction to skip this step when it wasn't necessary, right? So now we're actually helping drive the business to ways in which they can optimize their process against the business goals that they set. And all very much with a human hand firmly on the steering wheel. Like the software is not going to go change the process without asking you first. But I think it becomes this really powerful way to start stitching together some of the different technologies that have been out there around process mining and predictive technologies and workflow automation, so that the business is continuously getting smarter and more effective over time.
As you said earlier on, Pega has been involved with the predictive analytic stuff and predictive AI for years, and the large language models. And over the last year or so, I know you guys have been really emphasizing the whole autonomous enterprise thing. How has this desire, this want for all this Gen AI, has that been like an accelerant, do you think, that will help move closer to the autonomous enterprise quicker than if this stuff had not jumped off the map over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the autonomous enterprise prior to the what I would call Chat GPT revelation of the power of Gen AI.
Right.
What I think this does is Gen AI provides us the capability to stitch together this technology in ways and with speed that maybe we hadn't thought was possible prior, right? It's possible with process mining to go in and poke around in the reports and find bottlenecks. And then if you find a bottleneck, go over to your process automation team and say, hey, can you fix this bottleneck? And then they can do some research in process prediction models to see if there's a prediction that they could use to optimize it. Well, the cool thing is we have all those pieces in our technology stack. So I can now use Gen AI to start just stretching that all together. So now I level up the conversation so that it's no longer about these individual tech, but it's about a business value conversation of what can I do to optimize this process to deliver the best experience to my customer? or minimize my throughput, or minimize the cost to process, or minimize the risk of regulatory infractions. Like now I can level it up at a business value discussion and then assemble all that really powerful stuff together to answer and drive against that goal.
So that's cool. So now that all the pieces are in place, they're assembled.
Yeah.
And the story that you just told on top of the assembled pieces, it sounds like a winning, story to be able to go out and tell your customers. So what are they telling? What's the response to that at this point?
So I think where I'm talking with customers is like, one, you see lots of excitement about that vision, but also lots of realization that we still have to take them on a journey through it, right? And the way I describe it is there's a lot of work in our customers' business that's not only manual right now, it's still unmanaged. Like they don't know where it is. They don't know who's doing it. You walk into their operations center and like every morning the managers print out a bunch of reports that are like, here's what you work on today, right? So like my first step is not to take you to a self-optimizing business. My first step is to take your manual work that's unmanaged and at least get you managing it so that like at least it's managed against a common structure and a best practice. You have prioritization so that people are working on the most important things. And once you put that structure in place, well, then maybe your next step is to add automation. So maybe I can use integration with web services or RPA or business rules to automate steps of that process or guide people through the process so that I can get better throughput. Well, now I'm starting to drive a lot of processes through this system. So what do I have? I have a data history of how the work is getting done. Well, that data history can now feed into a predictive AI engine. So I can maybe predict what your process is going to do and help you know that like when you enter a process at the beginning, you're going to end up writing this off 2 weeks later after spending $250 working it. So why don't I just write it off now? Or, hey, this process showed up. There's a 95% chance you're going to miss this SLA, which is going to trigger a $1,500 regulatory fine. So why don't we escalate this to the top of everybody's list before that happens, right? So now I've got processes that have intelligence baked into them. And as that intelligence starts learning over time, well, now my process starts to become self-optimizing and starts to be finding more opportunities to get better. But I have to go through that journey. I can't like skip over the steps along the way. So what we're talking to our clients about is that how do we go on that journey kind of process by process through your business?
All right. This has been really cool. But I have to ask because the whole last year has been filled with Gen AI. And because of the Gen AI talk, kind of the re-emergence of predictive analytics or predictive AI and all that kind of stuff. So the whole year you couldn't get through the year with some form of AI being at the forefront of the conversation. What is there a technology that we're going to be talking about other than the AI stuff in 2024 that you think is going to finally get a little airtime?
I think that AI is still going to drive a lot of airtime.
Okay.
Right. I think there are some things that have maybe stagnated that our AI is going to push and change the conversation on. So I think knowledge management is about to be transformed by the ability of AI to consume that knowledge, synthesize it, and return it to us in different ways. So I think I think we might find ourselves talking a lot about knowledge AI or an AI powered knowledge management, right? In ways that maybe we hadn't thought of before. I think low code is going to be transformed pretty significantly by AI. And I think not hopefully through code generation, because the whole point of low code is I actually don't want my business logic buried in a bunch of code. I want it somewhere where I can see it and touch it and document it and change it and move it around. But I think through the ability of AI models to continuously lower the bar for more and more business people to do things. So I think that you're going to increasingly see the line between design time and runtime blurred, right? So I imagine a world where an end user, through a couple of prompts in AI, might actually be creating a business process that they run. Like imagine like a claims administrator or a claims user at an insurance company being able to say, hey, assign a appraiser to go look at this house and schedule the appointment for them. And when they get the report, summarize it back for me. What they've basically done is they've written a little business process, right? That we can now go run for them, right? So like I think that kind of transformation is going to become really interesting. But like I don't think AI is going to like disappear from the landscape next. In fact, I think we're going to hit a period where businesses struggle to figure out what their comfort level, especially with Gen AI, their comfort level, their compliance rules, their regulatory approaches. And so I think you may even I think predictive AI and analytical AI is going to just kind of keep going because it's much more contained and private and safe and proven. Gen AI may in some organizations hit a little bit of a friction, but much like cloud was, like after a certain point, some of those concerns go away, and then it almost just becomes a de facto part of the architecture and the expectation.
We're not going to go back to the metaverse or
blockchain. We're still looking for great use cases for blockchain.
Boy.
No, I think the AI, like I think the way I describe it, because I have a lot of marketers who report to me, and I hope we're doing better than 26% of them using Gen AI. But you know what I think people are going to slowly start to get used to is this is a tool, and it's a tool that's going to be in our tool belts, and it's not going away. Like and so figuring out both as organizations and also individually of how do we use it, when do we use it, you know, how does it help us, where does it actually slow things down, what is it good at, what is it not. I think that's something that everybody is really kind of going to be continuing to work through. But I think it's become a kind of standard part of our business and probably our personal lives.
There was like a blip of time this past year when Apple announced their video. I forget what they call this.
Yeah.
And for just a brief shining moment, we weren't talking about this. Do you think when they actually put that out there, will that potentially be something?
Well, so I think what I thought was interesting about Apple is Apple basically released a whole bunch of AI products without ever using the word AI.
You're right.
Yeah. Right. And what Apple always does, and is always it's all of us good to remind, what they're so smart about is they talk about the end user experience. Mm-hmm. They talk about the value, right? Like behind a lot of the stuff that they showed you was a lot of AI. I mean, look, those goggles, they work because of a lot of AI, right? But that's not what Apple's selling you. What Apple's selling you is the experience. What Apple's selling you is the value. So, you know, I'm optimistic to think that we start having value conversations about where our business can go, and less maybe tooling conversations about, hey, we need to get some AI in here stat, right?
Yeah, like it's some sort of separate thing, you know. It's,
right. Yeah. As opposed to it's just like I don't know. It's like, you know, it's like software. Like, yeah, it's part of what we do.
Yeah. All right. Any spooky predictions, since you're in the Ghostbusters outfit and it's Friday the 13th? Any kind of wild spooky predictions you may have for next year?
Yeah. Spooky predictions. I mean, I am sure that we will see a publicized case of AI gone wrong. Right? You know, we all heard about the lawyer who had AI write his legal briefs.
Yeah.
Right?
That guy.
Right. And I'm sure there will be some other examples. Right. So that's my I'm almost positive we will see that, and maybe we'll see it at, you know, unfortunately, maybe some big scale. But what I also hope is we see some stories of this stuff actually really being used well.
Yeah.
And driving better experiences for customers, better experiences for employees, growth opportunities for organizations, and helping us continuously kind of balance all those needs.
Yeah, and get that lawyer a little rag help, because he could have.
Yeah, exactly. A little rag would have solved that problem, man.
Yeah, so much so. All right, and AI. Do you think AI would have been good for you as a comedian? When you would you have liked to had a co-pilot as you were doing that?
It's funny. There's some improv groups out there who've been playing with having Gen AI as a participant. I think it would have been useful as an idea generator, as a co-player. We've got some tools that we just put in Pega customer service that use AI to act like a customer. So that if you've got a customer service agent, and lots of people have customer service agents that are starting to move from talking on the phone to handling chats, which is sometimes a tough transition. Well, Gen AI is actually really good at acting like a customer on the other end of a chat conversation. And you can give it a mood, you can tell it a personality, you can tell it what just happened and why it's upset. So that, I think that kind of play acting side of Gen AI would have been really fun to play with as a comedian and an improviser.
AI better for comedians or musicians, since you're both?
Well, I think probably musicians, because I think, again, it's in a lot of the stuff we do anyway, right? Auto tune, right? For good or ill, right? It's basically a bunch of predictive AI models running on waveforms, right? I've got really cool. I don't have to lug around a whole bunch of pedals when I play guitar anymore, because I have one box that's this big, right? Because it's got a bunch of computer chips that are able to run a whole bunch of models that actually let it simulate, a 1963 Marshall stack.
Wow.
Right. So and I think sometimes we see all the new shiny stuff, but we forget the fact that these computer algorithms are already embedded in a lot of the stuff that we use, and drive a lot of value in those kinds of ways.
Hey, I'm an old college DJ, and when I think about what we had to do to lug around all that damn equipment and crates of music, and get it set up, get all the audio sounding good, get people dancing on the floor, try to interpret, well, what's gonna keep them on the floor dancing, and what these dudes now, they pull out like a little stick, or they're DJing off of their iPads now. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and being able to do things like have some tools that help you find songs that have similar beats, right? That might be able to plug in, and maybe it's not going to do the work of mixing it for you, but it might open your mind to possibilities that you weren't thinking of before.
Or a little recommendation. Oh, you might want to play this one next.
Yeah. You might want to mix it. You might want to mix in this tune. Cool.
So look, on the whole, I'm very positive about the future of this. Sounds like you are too.
Yeah, I think we got to be cautious, right? And I think the ethical stuff is really important. I think we've got to use it in a way that's empathetic. I think we have to remember that AI models are built on data. Data is built by our society. Our society has inherent biases, so we have to go make sure we check and test that those biases aren't in our data, or if they are, that we're taking the right steps to remediate the impact of them, right? So I think we have to be conscientious about that stuff. Yeah. But I also think that there's a lot of power and potential in this technology.
So when we have this conversation next year, this time, what do you hope that we'll be talking about?
Your costume.
I went. See, I'm going dressed as a Rams fan.
There you go. That's fine. I would go dressed as a Patriots fan, but they all have their heads buried in the sand right now.
Yeah. So once again, Don, it's been a pleasure, and thanks for dressing up for the occasion.
No problem.
And looking forward to having more of these kind of conversations and see what Pega is doing. And do we have a date for Pega World for next year yet?
I do. I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't know it. It is in June of next year, and I'm going to go pull it up real quick so that I can give you that answer. But
while you're doing that, are we going back to Vegas?
We are back in Vegas, June 9th through 11th.
Okay. All right. I will get that on the calendar. So, because it's always a good time. And Don, once again, thanks again. And thanks to everybody checking this out. And have a great weekend. And we'll see you next week for a few more good minutes.
All right. Happy Friday the 13th, everyone.
Yeah. Stay safe out there.
Yeah.